TB family, it's Tony, again. Let's get right to it. What gets in the way of our progress? What is it that causes most people to fail? What is the real thing that gets in our way of the dreams that we want to manifest? We all got different stories. Well, I don't have the resources. Well, I'm too young, I'm too old. Well, I don't have the capital. Well, everybody's got a reason why they're not successful in business or in life. But there's only one reason why. And that is because we'll come up with all the resources that we don't have, the time, energy, the money, the capital, the systems, whatever it is. But the most successful people find the resources because they're resourceful. They figure out what's needed and they have enough positive emotion to find the answers. Because if you're creative enough, as I said before, you'll find the answer. If you're determined enough, you'll get through the problem. If you care enough for other people, you can get them to care about you and your mission. So, the ultimate resources are human emotion, but there's one emotion that is the only reason why people fail, and you know what it is, it's an F word, fear. False evidence appearing real, it's called, or F everything and run, is probably more example of what people really think, laughs, when they look at this thing called fear. But I want to tell you that there's some simple things you can do to get through that fear, because if you don't get through the fear, you're just going to have excuses and stories, and even if you succeed, we all get fearful. The strongest people on earth have a place where they're fearful. You know, I do these seminars for years where I included the fire walk, but before I did that, I used to use skydiving. And I still do some of my coaching crew, but some people are not afraid of fire but are scared to hell of heights. Some people, they can jump out of an airplane, but put them in front of a group of people to try and speak, and they freak out. We all have fear, it's the human condition, because we all have a 2 million-year-old brain, and it's not designed to make you happy. As I've shared with you, it's designed to make you survive. So it's always looking for what's wrong, it's always casting these images. And think about all the things you've ever worried about or you've been fearful about. How many times have you been worried about something, fearful about it, for months, or weeks, or days, and it never happened? Or maybe that's happened many times to you. So I thought maybe we'd do a quick little session on what I've done in my life as a simple system to break through those fears, because I get them, too, and I'm, obviously a lot less today, and it's not because I'm so smart, or strong, or courageous. By the way, courage means you're afraid, but you do it anyway. If there's no fear, it's not courage. But it takes less now, just like building a muscle, because I've been doing it, for 43 years coming up on now. But I want to tell you where it started for me. Because you're all far advanced from where the heck I was. It started for me, on conquering the fear, I think, when, my mom and dad had these horrendous fights. It was my fourth father, I loved him to death. And their fights were so intense, so my mom got really angry, and she chased him out of the house, and he left. And it was just a really untenable environment. And I loved him. And so then I kind of defended him, and so, the next thing I know, my mom went crazy and she chased me out with a knife. And by the way, my mom wouldn't have killed me, hurt me, stabbed me. But it was pretty crazy environment to live in, and when I got outside those doors, there was this sense of freedom, like, I'm not going to live this way anymore. And I'll let you know, I wouldn't be who I am without my mom. She was such a shaper of me. She pushed me in craziest ways. And she was such a loving, incredible person, but, anybody who gets drugs and alcohol in their system, and they get altered, and she got a little crazy in that area. So she chased me out, and I know I'm not going to be dead, but I'm not going to get killed, but I'm not going back in that house. I'm 17 years old, it's Christmas Eve, I have to figure out what the hell to do. And I have no core skill sets. I'm still in high school, and I'm working as a janitor to try to help pay for things at the house, my family, because we were very poor. And so I remember, I came out of there, and I went walking, it started to rain, and I'm walking outside. And I slept the first night up on a hill, and the rain was so bad, I thought I'd get under these trees, and I got wet. And so, I finally went to this, local Y-type place, and I got cleaned up. And then, the same thing at school the next day. And eventually, got to where I could live in the laundry room of, a friend of mine. And I was depressed. I was so depressed. I just felt like, my brother and sister, I love so much, they are 5 and 7 years younger, and I was apart from my family, and I had no compelling future. And things looked pretty hopeless. And when you're that depressed, your brain can do weird stuff to you. And I was thinking really not good thoughts. I won't go elaborate, but you get the sense. And then, something kind of kicked in. And what kicked in was, when I was 17, maybe 6 months before, I had gone working for this man on weekends, just trying to make some more money. And I was helping him to move, he was, in the 70s, that's how old I am, laughs, in the 70s. He was making money in Orange County, California, buying and selling homes, and flipping them. And the economy, the inflation was going crazy, and property values were going high, and he was making a lot of money. And I remember my parents telling me that this guy, used to be such a loser, and now he's so successful. And so when he offered to have me come and help him move, because he was trying to save money on it, and so he'd make more money on the houses, and I was, I'd gone from 5 feet 1 inch to 6 feet 2 inches pretty quick, and I offered to do it. But I really did it because I wanted to make money, but I wanted to pick his brain, even then. And that's how I got exposed to the knowledge business. Because over the weekend, while I was with him, he'd say, "Hey, you're doing a great job." We were going to have lunch one time, and he goes, "You're really pushing hard, and you're a good worker, and you're going to succeed." And I said, "Well, talk about success." I said, "My parents, said you used to be such a loser, and now you're so successful." Laughs, the kids can say this stuff, right? And he looked at me like kind of shocked, and he goes, "Who said that?" I said, "Well, my dad." He goes, "Well, he's probably right, to be fair." He said, "My whole life changed because I went to this seminar." And I was like, what the heck is a seminar? I hadn't even heard the word. He goes, it's where this guy, who has become very successful for decades, takes the best at what is learned and he teaches you in 3 or 4 hours. And he saves you decades into days. Like, you don't have to learn by your own experience, you learn by his, and you save time, and you cut to the chase, and you learn what it takes to be successful. And I paused. I'll never forget, I said, "Well, I'd like to go to one of those things. Could you get me in?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, will you?" And he said, "No." I said, "You can, but you won't." He goes, "Yeah, because if I get you in, you won't value it." He goes, "You've got to buy the ticket yourself." And I'll never forget, I said, "Well, how much is it?" And he said, $35. That would be like, $250 today, right? Or $300, whatever it'd really be with inflation. And, I said, $35? I make $40 a week as a janitor. That's like a week's pay to hear some guy talk for 3 or 4 hours. He goes, "Well, then just go being a janitor, keep doing that the rest of your life, and learn by your own experience. It'll probably take you decades, you may never figure it out, or you can learn what this guy's learned and save yourself a few decades for $35. So I remember, I was like, oh my God, this is like the toughest decision. I took a couple days to do it, and I finally made the plunge. Thank God, I did. Because that all happened in about, I don't know, 8-9 months before this incident where I'm out on my own. It's Christmas Eve, and I've got to figure out what to do. And so, in the midst of this depression, in the middle of this laundry room and feeling sorry for myself, some of the basic things he said kicked into my brain. And one of those first things he said was that the most successful people on earth are leaders. He said, leaders are readers. And then he'd say, don't let a day go by without reading 30 minutes a day. And that today, people think 30 minutes is, the stuff that gets pushed to you with clickbait. And you're not talking about this, he's talking about a book. Laughs, you want something with strategies, or tools, or insights, could really change your life. And you've got to feed that mind. And it began there. And my life started to change. And so I'd like to walk you through the 5 things I did, and some came directly from Jim Rohn, some they came about by reading other people's work, and they kind of evolved. And they're so simple, but if you're feeling fear stopping you, you're light years from where I was, laughs, at that stage of my life, feeling sorry for myself, living in a laundry room. But I found anybody can change their life doing these simple 5 things. And I still, even today, if I want to get new momentum, I take a look at this checklist and go, am I doing these enough? So what are they? They're pretty simple. The first one is exactly what I said. If you're going to succeed and you're feeling depressed, frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed, fearful, whatever, you've got to feed your mind. Every single day you've got to feed and strengthen your mind. And you can't hope that a good idea is going to interrupt you. Laughs, great ideas don't interrupt you, they've got to be pursued. And I know you know that, or you wouldn't be part of this course. You came for this because you are one of those people looking for answers, and you're looking for self-education. But it's one thing to do it every once in a while, it's another to do it as a system for the rest of your life. Because habits are what create us. It's not what you do once in a while that matters, it's what you do every day. And that's what shapes your character, that's what shapes, your psychology. And Jim really explained it to me this way when I went to a seminar the first time, 17 years old, and he didn't just say it to me, he said it to the whole group, and then, when I got to know him later, he would always repeat this and give you this same advice, because it was so sound. He said, leaders are readers, but he used to say, but he'd ask this question, he'd ask it in the audience, and then he'd ask me personally, like I never heard it before. Laughs. And he'd say things like, listen, he said, what if in life you don't protect your mind? What if you look at life, let's say you want a cup of coffee, and let's say your worst enemy puts sugar in your coffee. He goes, what happens if you drink that coffee? I said, well, you have sweet coffee. And he goes, yeah. What if your what if your best friend or a family member, by accident, drops 1 drop of strychnine in your coffee? What's going to happen? I said, you'd be dead. And he goes, that's right. So remember, life is both sugar and strychnine. And watch your coffee. Laughs, I just laughed, and he goes, here's what I mean, every day stand guard at the door of your mind. Because what's getting in there is shaping you. And he said, don't just stand guard at it, notice what's going in and who's delivering it, because people lack a positive intent and they can limit you. He said, do something proactive. He'd say to me, again, every day, read 30 minutes a day. Miss a meal, don't miss reading 30 minutes a day. And he used to say, read something that will challenge you. Read something that's going to make you grow. Read something that's either going to give you a philosophy that will guide your life, so you're more fulfilled, or strategy that makes you more successful. Don't just read random stuff. He said, you can do that, too, but this 30 minutes is for your growth. Because he always used to say, look, a person's income will not ever far exceed their personal development. Like, you're not going to be able to build a business where you're marketing to superior people if you're inferior in your own growth. And he said, and everyone starts somewhere, but if you do it daily, you cannot believe the advantages that you'll have. You know, you look at somebody like Bill Gates, or you look at somebody like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett reads, I read the other day, I think it's 2 hours every single day still, in his 80s. And he's been doing that for decade, after decade, after decade. That's why he has such a base of knowledge, and skill, and ability, that he can do so many things. He one of the wealthiest men in the world and having a damn good time doing it. So I really want to encourage you, in the midst of the KBB, while you're learning these with KBB, you're still going to do things that are going to improve you. Again, you know, I think I shared this with you guys before. It's like Jim Rohn was telling me, it's like we're all equal as spirits and souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. What makes us superior in the marketplace, again, is if you can find a way to add more value. But you can't do that if you're not constantly growing. Because, I remember, Pat Riley, he's a dear friend of mine, he used to be a coach of the Lakers, and then, of course, in New York, and then he moved down to Miami and became an owner and a coach, and just brilliant man. He's got, more championship rings than 99% of people on the planet. And I remember him telling me that, you know, his father taught him early on, when he was sloughing off, he said, while you're busy sloughing off, someone else is practicing. Someone else is getting better. And one day, they will meet you and defeat you. Told him this when he was like 12, and, laughs, it changed his psychology, and he became one of the most driven people you can know. But you've got to feed and strengthen the mind every day. And so that's the first thing I did. I got out of my little room. I don't remember how much at the time, $19, $20 to my name at this point. I took buses since I didn't have a car. And I went from where I was living, this place called Glendora, California, placed east of LA, to this place called Claremont. And I don't remember the exact time, but it was like, you know, almost a 40-minute bus drive, if I remember right. And I went to this, because I had been there once. I'd been to this bookstore. And it was like a, you know, success, spiritual bookstore, and it had all these different books. And I was like, I've got to feed my mind. And so I went in, and I thought, I can go to the library, I'll do that, too. But I need to buy a book, so I'm invested in a different level. So I had to find the right book. And I remember going through all these books. They were all so many good books, and I had already read Think and Grow Rich before that, Napoleon Hill's book, and I saw this book called The Magic of Believing, by Claude M. Bristol. And it talked about the size of your thinking in terms of the size and quality of your life, and that, I needed to really train my brain to have certainty, to believe, and it's such a core skill for me to this day. This all happened when I was 17. I took that book, rode the bus back. I was feeding my mind with this, and I started doing everything he talked about in the book. And it was really just training your brain for certainty, training or saying to believe, to know, because our beliefs create and our beliefs destroy. The wrong belief will destroy your life. Oh, it's not worth it, who gives a damn, and never heard the right belief, I will find the FN way, it'll be worth it. Those beliefs can change your whole life. Because they can get you to act different, feel different, be different, produce a different result. And I remember one of the things he talked about is, if you're feeling depressed or something else, put posters on the wall, or take your goals and put them on your mirror in soap and stare through it. So in that little laundry room, literally, I used the soap on the mirror where you wash things out, and I wrote, all these different things. And I wrote, only a loser is depressed. Because I was so depressed, but I knew I wasn't a loser. And it's like, something about that, just seeing it, looking in my own eyes and seeing it, and the goals I was going to achieve, and I'm telling you, it transformed me. I started to put together a plan, I stopped being depressed, I started constantly conditioning my mind, every day I began to read. And I didn't have the money then, so I'd go to the library, that's how old I am, laughs. There wasn't an internet where you could go on and then do all these things for free on YouTube or get all these books you download. But I've done it ever since. And as the time went by, I started using audios, because, as you know, you can do what I call net time, no extra time. You can listen to an audiobook while you're driving in your car, while you're working out, right? While you're cleaning your house. So you don't have an excuse, oh, I don't have time for this, it's using net time, no extra time. So that's number one. And if you're not doing that, it's the first thing I would do. Feed your mind every day. Something's going to inspire you, something's going to give you a new skill, strategy. I wrote a lot of autobiographies, because my life was so painful, and I was filling my pity pot. But then I started reading some of the most brilliant men and women in the world and what their real stories are, and all the shit they went through. Pardon my French, I don't think shit's French, but you get the idea. Laughs, it was just like, it was horrific what they went through. And I started realizing, hey, my past does not equal my future. My biography is not my destiny. But I didn't get that by someone telling me, I got it by the experiences plus. If you read a book, especially a book the author, themselves, wrote, like an autobiography, as you read their thoughts, you think their thoughts. You begin to think like these great people. And so, for me, it's been one of the most valuable tools in my life, it's still used to this day, and I encourage you to do the same. I even went down, I remember, I used to take the buses down to Los Angeles, it was, again, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours spent on the buses, drive to this little place called, Night Education, KNIGHT, and, like with a sword. And there was this man there named Mario. He was a Jewish man who was just so passionate about getting the best speakers in the world and their ideas and insights. And this was when they still had they had albums in those days, Laughs, and the new BR, and 8 tracks, they had the new breakthrough, which was cassettes. And I used to save up like $300 is what it would cost, I'm making $40 a week. To buy 6 cassette tapes with 6 workbooks on a particular subject to condition my mind. And I'd save this money up, I'd drive all the way down, I would get it, because I invested so much, man, I listened to that stuff over and over again. And I even interviewed him, years and years later, maybe 20 years later, and I've been successful and so forth, and I wanted people to know my story's true. And he told this story, he goes, this little fat kid, because, I was 5 feet 1 inch when this all started, right, and this little kid comes in, and he's so on fire, with energy and wants to do this. But he also told a story I forgot, which is I bounced a check to him. Laughs, but he said, but Tony, to his credit, as soon as it bounced, he called me before I called him and said, I screwed up, I didn't realize, and I came down to give him the tapes, and he's like, no, you keep them. And I said, no, you keep them, because I don't want to get them until I paid for them and so I know I've earned it. That's how strongly I felt about it. And it's true. That's why I'm here today. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you're really going to be successful, you've got to feed and strengthen your body every day. See, you can't separate the mind and body. You can read all kinds of things and feed your mind, but if your body's weak, it's hard to have a strong mind. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to do something each day. It can be brief, it could be even 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be 2 hours of a workout. But you've got to do something that makes you feel strong. And so that could be just a really intense walk, that could be lifting some weights for 10 minutes. It could be, I like to do Tabata sometimes, 20 seconds full tilt, 10 seconds off. There's a variety of patterns like that, but you only do 4 minutes of work. And science shows you get a better workout than if you did 30 minutes. Now, you've got to do it, warm up properly, that's my disclaimer, or you can pull some muscles, but the point is, you want to do something strong. And, many of you know that I use cold plunges throughout my homes. I mentioned it before, but I do it to train my brain and body both. When you jump in that freezing cold water, 56 degrees or 42 degrees often in Sun Valley when I walk through the snow going to the river in the winter time, it's a whole new world. And there's never a time, I've told people this a million times, there's never a time I want to jump in that water, but I don't negotiate with myself. I train myself. When I say go, we go. Right? If I don't say, well, maybe in a few minutes when I'm ready, or or maybe tomorrow. And by developing that habit of the mind and the body, I can get myself to do almost anything. That's one of the reasons I have the privilege to be there with you. But these abilities, these skills, like, I built this Tony Robbins guy, he's me. But I built him by conditioning him to be his best with my brain being conditioned and my body being conditioned. Does that make sense? And so when I jump in that water, man, every organ of the body, inaudible 17 minutes and 30 seconds, and you get out of it, and, laughs, it's painful when you get it, but you get out of it, you feel like $1,000,000. And so it's that discipline. And I can do that in 2 minutes. And I have a change. Or like I said, go lift weights. When you run hard, or push hard, all that blood goes to your body and you feel strong inside. And you feel mentally strong. So you know that fear and courage are both in the body, right? I mean, if you're really fearful, where do you feel it? Like, really, if you've ever been really scared something horrible's going to happen, it's like you feel it in your throat, or you feel it in your gut. It's physical. So is courage. It's physical. It's that strength, it's that ability. So it doesn't have to be 2 hours, it can be 3 to 5 minutes, but you need something to snap yourself into a strong physical state. And I encourage you to do something at least 3 days a week where you really build physical strength. So, if we feed our mind every day, just 30 minutes, everybody's got 30 minutes somewhere, you can do it in that time. If we take care of our body and we strengthen it, you're going to have momentum.